right. So I'm Chelsea Osterman. I'm a medical oncologist and executive medical director with Tempus AI, and I oversee all of our AI applications, which are now very numerous. But I will pick just a few to focus on today as part of this deep dive into some of the exciting things that Tempus AI is doing. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Tempus, we were founded about 10 years ago when our CEO, Eric Lefkofsky's wife, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And as she embarked on her treatment journey, Eric was really amazed at how little data there seemed to be guiding these key treatment decisions. And so, like anyone else would do, he created a company to generate that data in order to help inform the treatment decisions that are now being made. So he did this very interestingly by starting off with a portfolio of NGS tests, and then using the data that was generated through that, combining it with data from other sources like EMR integrations to really put together this entire precision medicine platform. So now fast forward 10 years, Eric's wife is doing really well, and the Tempus AI platform now contains over 500 petabytes of data. So in case you're like me and have no idea what a petabyte is, it's roughly the amount of information contained in 500 billion pages of text. And we've got 500 of those. So as Jason was saying, having really large-scale data is key to training AI models and validating them, and also key to the equity perspective of making sure that all patients are being represented when we're developing these models. And so that 500 petabytes of data is really feeding into everything that we do to try to make sure that our models are as representative as possible for the patients at Ochsner, the patients at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and everywhere in between. So we really believe that multimodal data is the core foundation of artificial intelligence in healthcare. And so, our platform is combining this data from multiple sources. We have our portfolio of NGS tests, which are offering really rich genomic data, including both DNA and RNA. And then we're able to combine that with data directly from the EHR, so all of your progress notes, your imaging reports, and then layer on top of that as well actual images themselves. So actual DICOM images from the CT or MRI scans, EKGs that are being done as part of standard of care. And all of that is getting combined together to then generate insights. So those insights may be, what clinical trials a patient might be eligible for, what therapies are indicated for them at that particular point in their journey. And all of that then rolls up into our AI applications that really have a broad number of capabilities at this point. So, we have moved really far beyond just being an NGS company, and in fact changed our name from Tempus Lab to Tempus AI to really try to reflect that change in prioritization for the company. So really, AI is now infused in everything that we're doing, and it's really providing this additional layer of intelligence on top of all of our testing and everything else. So some of that intelligence comes in the form of insights that are directly on the report that you would get that can help illustrate what particular trials a patient might be eligible for or therapies that are indicated. We also have digital pathology insights, which I know Jason had mentioned a little bit about digital pathology and computer vision. I think this is a really exciting area as well. And through this, we're able to actually generate insights even when the tissue may not be sufficient for full NGS testing. And then finally, we have our novel algorithms. And so these are able to give you enhanced multi-gene signatures that provide insights beyond kind of the traditional biomarkers or just the presence of a gene alteration. And the thing that is also really interesting here is that all of this is also, the intelligence is consistently updated throughout the entire patient journey. So it's reflecting really that current state, and it's informed by the latest clinical picture. And then it's all accessible in natural language. So at the bottom here is an example from Tempus 1, which is our AI agent that's embedded into our portal. So all you have to do is ask. So I'd say that right now we have kind of 3 primary goals at Tempus. And the first is to have AI-enabled diagnostics and to have these be seamlessly accessible through the EHR. So really getting back to the workflow perspective that Jason highlighted as being really critical, making sure that the tests and their results are directly embedded in the EHR in a way that makes them usable. The second piece is AI-enabled care, so taking all of that data and AI and making it usable for clinicians to actually be able to make the decisions that they need to. And then finally, AI-enabled research, where we're taking all of this data and making it useful, and both harmonizing it as well as allowing it to democratize access to things like clinical trials and cutting-edge therapies. So our mission is really to leverage AI in order to support clinicians so that they can make the best decisions possible and help patients lead healthier, longer lives. So touching on that first point a little bit more, I wanted to highlight some of our AI-enabled diagnostics that I think are a pretty unique offering. So this is a high-level overview of our currently available algorithms, and each of these was developed and validated using multimodal data. So going back to that 500 petabytes of information, that allows us to develop a lot of these algorithms. And so each test that's performed is also producing more data that's then getting fed back into the models. And so we're continuing to improve upon and add value every time we're iterating with these algorithms. And there's a couple here that I wanted to highlight in particular, where we've really extended beyond kind of traditional oncology. So the first one is the page predict model. And so this is a model that's able to use a single H&E slide to predict the presence of over 100 oncogenic biomarkers in just 5 minutes. So you can imagine how much information that's able to give you, one slide, and giving you all of these insights. So I think as oncologists in particular, we're all familiar with the saying that tissue is the issue. And I think that that's really only becoming more true these days as the number of tissue-based tests, IHC assays that are needed to actually fully characterize a tumor is continuing to grow. And yet our techniques for getting that tissue have not changed. And it's a really high burden on patients for us to be doing repeat biopsies in order to try to obtain more tissue. And so what's great about Page Predict is it can help with that prioritization. So it can give you a signal to say, what are the tests that I should do first to maximize the likelihood that I'm getting an actionable result before I've exhausted that tissue. So this is, again, not replacing full NGS testing where it's an option where patients have sufficient tissue, but really providing a way to help maximize and optimize the workflow that's being used. The other one that I wanted to highlight is actually down at the bottom here. And so within cardiology, we now have 2 FDA-cleared ECG AI algorithms, and these analyze routine 12-lead EKGs and can actually predict patients that are at risk of developing either AFib or low EF, so heart failure. And our ECG AI approach is really taking on creating a proactive way to identify patients that may be at risk for these diseases. And we can even take it one step further. So we have a Cardiology Next program, which actually helps identify patients that are also potentially undertreated. So those who may be eligible for additional guideline-directed care or a clinical trial. So really trying to encompass that entire patient journey and making sure that patients are being both diagnosed appropriately and treated appropriately. And I think that this work is really important, not just for the cardiologists, but as Jason was also talking about in terms of predictive toxicity models, so many of the agents that we use as cancer-directed therapy now have potential cardiac toxicity. And we may not always be great at making sure that we're rigorously following patients to evaluate who may be developing that. And so using these algorithms, we can actually look to detect signs of potential toxicity earlier on and hopefully intervene early so that we can ideally prevent additional damage from happening or even reverse existing damage in some cases. So I think these are some really exciting examples of kind of the breadth of work that we're doing in a lot of different areas that all kind of filters back into being really relevant for us as clinicians. I'm gonna take a little sip of water. 1 second, thank you. All right, so we are many of us are oncologists though, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of our oncology algorithms. This one that I wanted to highlight is our immune profile score, or IPS. And so, thinking about our traditional biomarkers, PD-L1, TMB, that we use to try to identify who might benefit from immunotherapy, there's clearly still a big gap there where those biomarkers just don't perform as well as we would want them to really categorize patients into who is likely to benefit and who's not. And so that's why we really worked to develop this IPS score, was to try to fill some of that unmet need. And so we generated, the IPS score algorithm generates a score from 0 to 100, and then it classifies patients as either IPS low or IPS high. And we generated this algorithm using a combination of DNA and RNA. Again, it's trained on a pan-cancer cohort using that really rich multimodal data set that we have as Tempus. And you can see here the really striking results. So the IPS high versus low stratification was significant across immunotherapies, including monotherapy and combination therapy, in the frontline setting or in the second-line setting. And really key is that it demonstrated prognostic utility independent of TMB, PD-L1, or MSI status. So this is an algorithm that doesn't require any additional tissue or blood samples. It's being run automatically in the background, and yet it's providing this really important prognostic and predictive information. And I think that this is really opening up this new wave of how we generate insights beyond kind of our standard biomarkers and really understand how to unlock more of precision medicine for more patients. So switching gears a little bit and thinking about our AI-enabled care and AI-enabled research, our Tempus Next platform is a unified solution that it has the goal of helping physicians understand what the next best step in a patient's care might be. So whether that's additional biomarker testing, imaging, or a clinical trial, we're looking to really understand the patient journey in a deep way and be surfacing those insights to clinicians in real time so that they can act on them. So on the left here, you'll see the first component of this platform. That's our clinical intelligence platform. And that really helps to ensure that guideline-directed care is being received by all patients consistently across an entire health system. And then on the right is our Next Trials platform. So this includes both technology and services that help site teams more efficiently and effectively identify patients for clinical trial enrollment. So I'll go into a little more detail on both of these. So the first one is our next clinical intelligence platform. We typically call this a care gap, although a lot of people get a little funky about calling it a gap because it's not something that, we're not trying to say that people didn't do a certain thing that they were supposed to, but more recognizing that we work in these really fragmented and siloed health systems. And so just like with Jason's first example from earlier today, we all have the best of intentions and we want to give the best care possible to every one of our patients. But sometimes things happen and people fall through the cracks for reasons that we can't even understand. And then you add on top of that the fact that all of these clinical guidelines are now becoming even more complex and nuanced, and the updates are coming basically every day at this point. And so trying to keep up with all of that across the tens of thousands of patients in a health system is just not really feasible. And so that's where we created this platform, is to actually automatically analyze the patient records, understand where a patient is at in their current treatment journey, and then flag patients who may have diverged from current clinical guidelines. So this is really presenting an opportunity to offer additional care to patients that's guideline directed, and it's doing it in a way that seamlessly integrates within those existing workflows. And we're not burdening your site care teams that already are doing 150% of the work. We're really trying to alleviate that, use AI to best identify those patients that could benefit from additional care in some way. So highlighting a quick case study from a deployment of this next platform. This was done at TriHealth, which is kind of a medium-sized institution that's in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we started off by looking at a cohort of patients with resectable stage 1B through 3 non-small cell lung cancer. And we saw that at baseline, about 30% of patients actually had an indication for additional biomarker testing that they had not yet received. And that's important because if you don't get the test, you can't know that you're positive and you can't get the targeted therapy. And so really, making sure that those biomarker tests are happening is a key part to ensuring true precision medicine. After just 6 months of deployment at TriHealth, we were able together to bring that up to 100% compliance. So every patient was getting that testing that was indicated, and we were finding patients with things like ALK fusions where it truly did change the course of their treatment, and it really did make a key important impact on the care that they were receiving. And so we are now continuing to expand this offering really substantially, expanding the number of diseases, the care gaps that we're addressing, and doing this across, again, not just oncology, but also cardiology and additional things to come. So finally, the last thing that I wanted to highlight is a little bit about our next trials platform. This is kind of similar to how Triomics, when Sebastian was talking about their trial matching. I think it functions very similarly to that. We use an agentic approach to take those complex protocol IE criteria and turn them into rules for patient matching. And so we're able to, again, do this at scale. And so we're able to search through or compare every single patient against every trial at an institution continuously. So this isn't, a static list that was pulled based on some high-level EHR criteria. This is constantly evolving and constantly reflecting where that patient is at in their treatment journey. This is able to use all of the information contained within the EHR, the structured and unstructured data, the NGS testing from Tempus or from other vendors, and is really able to effectively guide a lot of those workflows as well. So one of the kind of final key components of this trial matching software that we have is that it also has this intelligent scoring system. And so this actually assigns a relevance score to every patient and trial match. And that really reflects how likely the patient is to truly be eligible for that specific trial. And what's great is you can then prioritize your workflows to have the patients that are most likely to be matches reviewed by your site staff, clinical research coordinators first. So it's really trying to prioritize where is the time being spent so that it can be spent on the places that are most valuable. And I know Jason doesn't love the word human in the loop, but I still like it. And so I'm going to say, this really is a human in the loop process. And again, it's built to have that transparency and accountability. And so the platform surfaces the evidence that it has that supports the decisions that it's making, and you can readily see directly from the EMR, where did it figure out that this patient has breast cancer so that you can verify that information. I think one saying that I've started to really like when it comes to AI is trust but verify. And I think that maybe is better than human in the loop, that it's, you want to treat it like it's a new medicine intern where they're like really eager to help and a little bit over-caffeinated, so they're like working at double speed. And so, you're listening to everything this intern is telling you, and you believe them, but you want to independently confirm those key pieces of information. So back to Jason's point, maybe you don't need to confirm the birth date. We can trust the intern on that one. But the key pieces of what therapies they've had and their responses, those we want to verify, because it's you as the clinician that has that years of experience and that expertise that comes with that to really understand the context and put the whole picture together. And so, the kind of last piece that I'll end on here is, one of the quotes I really like is, AI won't replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace those who don't. And I think that is becoming readily apparent, that as we are dealing with a shortage of oncologists and yet more cancer diagnoses, we need to get smarter about how we're providing care for our patients. And how do we do that equitably, sustainably, at scale? And I think really AI is the answer to a lot of that. And it's how we make sure every patient is getting the best care possible for where they're at in their treatment journey, that we're able to actually deliver precision medicine, precision oncology, and it's a really exciting time to be a part of all of this. So with that, I will thank you all so much.